Bangladesh turned 50 last year. It was on 16 December 1971 when Pakistan Army surrendered to Indian Army, paving way for creation of Bangladesh as a separate country. On 2011, Prime Minister of Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina, awarded Indira Gandhi the Bangladesh Freedom Honour posthumously for her outstanding contribution to Bangladesh's liberation war. While India's role cannot be denied, it must be noted that in the winter of 1971, India's decision to intervene militarily in East Pakistan was seen as aggressive by many. So, was India's involvement really an act of aggression or retaliation against Pakistan? Or did India intervene on humanitarian grounds to stop a second holocaust, as the many speeches by Indira Gandhi suggest? There are few arguments or school of thoughts explaining the reason behind India's intervention in 1971. Let's discuss them in detail. But before that, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to the Gyan Tales for more such topics. During Bangladesh's liberation war with West Pakistan, an estimated 10 million people of East Pakistan, that is present-day Bangladesh, fled the country and took refuge in India, particularly in the Indian state of West Bengal, Tripura and Assam. During discussion in Parliament about the effects of refugees on Indian economy, a recurring theme was frustration that India was the sole bearer of the problem. The Prime Minister not only argued that it was an international crisis but also sent emissaries abroad to gain support for Bangladesh. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi felt the international community could pressure the Pakistani government to stop genocide. Interestingly, the Cold War politics constrained the world response. United States, for example, wanted to use Pakistan to reach out to China in order to normalize the relation between the United States and China. At a time when US was obsessed with communism, human rights violation and genocides did not seem to matter. With Indian representative failed to influence world leaders, Indira Gandhi went on world tour to make it clear that India was running out of resources to support refugees and some sort of international action would be required. But the reaction of the world made her frustrated, as the world chose to ignore 10 million refugee population. Thus, India started shifting its language as time progressed. While in June, India was still hoping for strong words from US. In November, India's stand had become more aggressive, stating clearly that India will not tolerate this situation for long. India rallied for international action and made it clear that in absence of such action, it would be forced to intervene militarily. The lack of international support made India realize that it was the sole bearer of the refugee burden. All these factors forced India to pursue its foreign policy without fearing international reprimand. India allocated 2.6 billion rupees for refugees, but their estimated need was 4.2 billion rupees. Not surprisingly, the authorities and the locals both felt the pressure. According to the newspaper sources, a ration card was given to all refugees that allowed them rice, dal and vegetables. A stipend was given as well, but that shrank from Rs 15 in April to Rs 1 in October, indicating a considerable drop in capabilities. In May, Indian Labour and Rehabilitation Minister expressed that this burden is too severe for India to bear alone. India's representative abroad also tried to involve the UNHCR and other bodies to help ease the burden. The general feeling seemed to be that India, despite best efforts, was overwhelmed by the cost. On June 15th, Indira Gandhi pointed out that no developed country in the world has had to face such a situation so far, and yet India to carry the burden alone. In all the speeches, whether Indira Gandhi or any other minister were clear and consistent, saying that India would be unable to support refugees for longer than 6 months. Perhaps the intervention did not surprise anyone after all. Indira Gandhi had won the national election in March 1971, largely based on her Garibi Hatao election campaign. With refugees creating a strain on their already limited resources, it was quite clear that she would not be able to achieve her pre-election promises. All the locals in West Bengal were largely sympathetic towards refugees due to the ethnic ties with the Bangladeshi people. Locals in Assam, Tripura were rather dissatisfied. The introduction of new ration cards for refugees had generated inflationary pressure, raising prices of basic food items, creating grievances among locals. So few argues that partly for re-election purpose, Indira Gandhi had to ensure that refugees do not impose a long-term problem, and this led to the military intervention. Irredentism means a policy of advocating the restoration of any former territory to a country. Some of the surveys mentioned that Indira Gandhi may have feared moves towards irredentism and hence intervened to prevent that. Many argues Indira Gandhi forecasted the unification of two Bengals, that is West Bengal and East Pakistan, which meant division of India, and thus she stepped into the war to have more control. An interesting element is how West Bengal supported the war with passionate feelings similar to India's independence struggle in 1930s. For example, patriotic songs about spirits of Bengal were revived and played on radio with the goal of creating unity and inspiring soldiers. But in actual, there were no efforts to turn this into a reality, and hence this school of thought did not gather much support. There were some concern as to possible collusion of Naxalites in West Bengal with the leftists in East Pakistan, who together could undermine the central government in India. West Bengal had already undergone violence and unrest owing to Maoist insurgencies in 1965, and there were periods of president's rule imposed. If the East Pakistani elements joined the local forces, it could be a catastrophe. India also had to take China out of the equation so that it could not help its all-weather ally Pakistan. In the short run, intervention for India meant refugee repatriation, and in the long run, it meant a divided Pakistan and regional dominance. Hence, having ensured that the international community will remain deaf to the calls for help, India was able to utilize a cost-benefit analysis based purely on national interest, that is, refugees, cost, inflation, and living spaces. Also, Green Revolution had not fructified yet, and India was still a food-deficient country. The only option India had was to free Bangladesh from the tyranny of Pakistan and thereby making a permanent peace. In this slide, we can surely say that the intervention was certainly India's best response to the crisis. Hope you liked the video. If you want to see more such videos, please subscribe to the Gyan Tales.